What if Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man was in Avengers 2012? What if Andrew Garfield's role as Spider-Man continued in the MCU, beginning with the first installment of the Avengers? With Spider-Man No Way Home around the corner, we will explore a new MCU universe with Andrew Spider-Man as a key character. For this fan fiction, Avengers will take place after the movie of The Amazing Spider-Man. Even though The Avengers was released in theaters earlier than The Amazing Spider-Man, for simplicity's sake, this fanfiction will take place in the year of 2012, but before the invasion of New York by Loki began. After the events of the Lizard and the death of Captain Stacy, Peter Parker was still juggling with his role as Spider-Man. He still had some adventures battling small-time crooks and gangs. A few months have passed since the incidents in The Amazing Spider-Man that had happened. Peter continued being with Gwen Stacy, even though Captain Stacy requested him to avoid her in order for her to stay safe. Peter believes that he can protect her from any danger, and he was still a little conflicted from what happened to her dad, but Peter promises that the same fate would not befall Gwen. Much of the start of the Avengers would be the same, where Loki encounters the Other, the leader of the extraterrestrial race known as the Chitauri. Loki promises to retrieve the Tesseract in return for an army to enslave Earth under his command. After Loki's attack on S.H.I.E.L.D.'s remote facility holding the Tesseract, Nick Fury reactivates the Avengers Initiative. Nick saw in his records a new hero known as Spider-Man who fought the same threats of a supervillain known as the Lizard. However, Nick believes that Spider-Man was still an amateur and decided not to recruit him into the Avengers Initiative. He decided to rely on his big guns and instructed Natasha to head to recruit Bruce Banner. Fury himself approached Steve Rogers to retrieve the Tesseract while Agent Phil Coulson visited Tony Stark to have him check on Eric Selvig's research. Meanwhile, Peter Parker was still adjusting his secondary life with Gwen Stacy and his high school career. Peter was no longer bullied by Flash Thompson, as Flash knew that Peter could fight him back. Peter was resting at his home and tuned into the news when he saw Loki's arrival. Loki was demanding the citizens to kneel before him and acknowledged him as their new ruler. Peter thought that this was just merely a cosplay or a hoax. However, he was surprised when he saw Steve Rogers and Stark and Romanoff confronting him and fighting with him. Loki then surrendered and was taken into captivity by the Avengers. Peter saw the Avengers battling Loki and figured that he was not only the one with superpowers. Peter wondered what it would be like to be a famous superhero across the world. He then remembered his Uncle Ben's famous words, "With great power must also come great responsibility." He figured that the heroes would be able to make a quick work of Loki, and Peter continued going back to school and stopped his duties as Spider-Man temporarily. He decided to spend more time with Gwen and Aunt May. Aboard the Helicarrier, the Avengers became divided over how to approach Loki. Steve found out that Nick Fury and S.H.I.E.L.D. wanted to harness the Tesseract to use it as a powerful weapon against hostile enemies. Loki possessed agents and then attacked the Helicarrier, and the stress caused Bruce Banner to turn into the Incredible Hulk. Hulk went into a rampage and was stopped by Thor, while Stark and Rogers defeated the possessed agents and worked to reset the damaged engine. Loki escaped and missed the commotion after killing Phil Coulson. Loki used the Tesseract to create a wormhole, bringing forth the Chitauri fleet onto New York. Peter was on a date with Gwen Stacy in New York. As they were walking, Peter noticed something emerging from the sky. He also heard people screaming frantically and running. His spider sense went off, and Peter and Gwen saw many police vehicles entering the city. Peter felt that something was amiss and told Gwen to get to safety. Gwen refused and said that she wants to know what was going on in the city. They managed to talk to a police officer who happened to be Captain Stacy's partner when he was still alive. He said that they have received reports of an alien invasion happening in New York. They were told to be stationed in the city with the National Guard to combat against the aliens. Just then, one of the Chitauri soldiers fired a shot in their direction, causing one of the police cars to explode. explode. The police car overturned and was heading into the direction of Peter and Gwen and the police officers. Peter knew that if he started using his webs and saved them, everyone else in that area would know the true identity of Spider-Man. Iron Man came in time to rescue them by shielding them from a car crash. Iron Man then told them to get to safety as things were about to get messy. Peter then told Gwen that he needed to help the other heroes. Gwen disagreed as she said that this isn't like his past enemies. These were aliens and might be even stronger than him. Peter said that he will rely on his instincts and agility to survive in the fight against the aliens. He said that the heroes will be overwhelmed by a large swarm of the invasion. They both kissed and Peter charged into a Spider-Man costume. Peter headed into the middle of the battle and helped to evacuate the civilians who were caught in the crossfire. There was a captive situation where some of the civilians were held as hostage by the Chitauri. Steve was about to handle the situation when he saw some of the Chitauri guards were being webbed into the ceiling. He saw someone in a tight spandex suit swinging from one place to another while taking out the Chitauri guards. After the hostages were released, Captain America thanked Spider-Man for his help. He said that he has never seen him before, and Spider-Man merely replied that he was a hero that belonged to the lower leagues. Cap disagreed and said that he believes that Peter can be a major asset for the team. He told Spider-Man to follow him to defeat more Chitauri army. Spider-Man arrived with Captain America and rallied with the other Avengers. Stark, Romanoff, Barton, Thor and Hulk, and the others were surprised to see a masked hero with them. Romanoff said that she recognized him from Fury's files. She said that Fury wanted to originally recruit him into the team, but felt that he was still amateurish. Captain America disagreed and explained how Spider-Man managed to defeat an entire unit of Chitauri by himself. The Avengers with Spider-Man then teamed up to fight against the Chitauri, and Tony said that he will head to Stark Tower, where the generator launching the wormhole was located. Spider-Man said that he will join Tony too, as he believes that he can retrieve Loki's scepter from him with ease. Tony at first refused to allow him to be with him, as he still doesn't know Spider-Man's capabilities, but Steve Rogers reassured him, and Tony and Peter headed to Stark Tower. At Stark Tower, Tony saw Loki with the scepter in the original timeline. The Hulk beats Loki into submission, defeating him. In this timeline, the Hulk was not present at Stark Tower, and the Hulk was fighting with other forces of the Chitauri fleet. Tony tried to buy time by talking with Loki. Loki then placed his scepter onto Stark's heart to control him, but there was no effects. Loki was surprised as he believed that every mortal with a heart would be controlled by a scepter. Tony screamed now, and Spider-Man came crashing into the building. He webbed Loki's scepter from him and shot webs, incapacitating Loki. With his hands and mouth glued with the webs, Loki fell to the ground and was defeated. Romanoff then contacted the others and told them that Loki's scepter can be shut down with the generator. At the same time, Peter received a call with his mobile phone. It was Aunt May. He was hesitant to pick it up as he was still on active duties as Spider-Man. Tony then gave him some private space to answer the call, and as Peter answered the call, he heard Aunt May screaming for help to save her. She said that she was out shopping for groceries when one of the Chitauri soldiers crashed into the shop where she was. The Chitauri foot soldiers had his vehicle with him. It was abducted, and Aunt May was in need. She needed help now. Peter told her to calm down and asked her for her location. She wasn't sure where she was, as she was in an air aboard the Chitauri soldiers' fleet, but she said that she could see Stark Tower from a distance. Peter then told her that he will come to rescue her, and Peter, who was still holding the scepter, wasn't sure what he should do. The Avengers still needed help to defeat the invasion of the Chitauri fleet, but Aunt May needed help. He doesn't want the same episode of Uncle Ben being killed because of his irresponsibilities to happen to Aunt May too. Tony, who overheard the conversation, told him to go rescue May. He asked Spider-Man to hand over Loki's scepter. Tony thanked Peter for his help, and Peter webbed away from Stark Tower. As he was searching for Aunt May in the city, he saw Clint, who was shooting at the aerial Chitauri soldiers. Spider-Man swung to Clint and asked him if he noticed any civilians being held hostage by any soldiers. Clint said that he saw one of the troops fled with an elderly woman, but he couldn't shoot it as the woman was still alive. Peter thanked Clint and quickly headed towards the direction of Aunt May. He eventually caught up with Aunt May and easily webbed the other soldiers. After defeating the soldiers, Peter brought Aunt May to safety. Aunt May then thanked Spider-Man and told him to be careful. She hugged him before he left, and Peter felt as though Aunt May was aware of his true identity as Spider-Man. Nick Fury's superiors then contacted him and told him that a nuclear missile will be dropped at mid downtown Manhattan to stop the assault once and for all. Nick Fury disagreed, as there were still many civilians alive who were trapped within the city. Fury informed the Avengers of the imminent nuclear missile that was heading towards Stark Tower. Iron Man was the only option to stop the missile. Stark managed to intercept the missile and took it through the wormhole towards the Chitauri fleet. The missile detonated, destroying the Chitauri mothership and its fleet. As Stark's suit was unable to sustain its power, he lost consciousness and started swirling to the ground. Instead of the Hulk saving him in the original timeline, Peter created a web parachute and brought Tony to safety. As Tony awoken, and the other Avengers informed him that Spider-Man saved him as he was free falling from the sky, Tony asked where Spider-Man was, and Natasha said that he left immediately after saving him. Peter reunited with Gwen, who was safe and missed the invasion. Gwen asked him if he was alright, to which he replied that he saved Aunt May, who was abducted during the attack. They both embraced, and Gwen told Peter that he should think about continuing his duties as Spider-Man. While small-time crooks and petty criminals were fine, Gwen was worried that an extreme battle would result in his death one day. Thor returned with Loki and the Tesseract to Asgard, where Loki was imprisoned. Meanwhile, Peter decided to stop being Spider-Man temporarily, as he felt that spending time with his loved ones was more worth it for now. While he returned home, he saw an invitation letter on the table. Aunt May said that it was from Tony Stark. He opened the letter, and it was an invitation to join the Avengers. Tony thanked Peter for saving him and for his help during the New York invasion. There was a spot reserved for him with the Avengers, and Tony said that he will keep his identity a secret. He knew that Peter Parker was indeed Spider-Man because he overheard Peter's conversation with his Aunt May when he was at Stark Tower. Tony then cross-referenced with Nick Fury's records of Spider-Man and managed to track down to Peter Parker being Spider-Man. Peter merely smiled and hugged Aunt May. The events of The Amazing Spider-Man 2 would happen 2 years later, as in the original timeline. Gwen Stacy decided to end her relationship with Peter, as Peter still kept a vow to her dad to move away from her to her own safety. Even though he thought that things could work out for the both of them, Peter and Gwen broke up but still resumed their friendship together. Peter would later face Electro and his also childhood friend, Harry Osborn. Amidst the battle with them, Peter failed to catch Gwen's body, causing her to hit the floor. This resulted in her death, and Peter was depressed and started quitting his duties as the Amazing Spider-Man for good. Both Gwen Stacy and Captain Stacy died, and in his hands, he was responsible for it. Even Uncle Ben's death was a part of his responsibility. After months of negligence in his duties as Spider-Man, and he stopped working at the Bugle, he was rotting away in his house. Even Aunt May was worried about him. Peter was throwing away his trash when he remembered the letter from Tony Stark given to him 2 years earlier. Peter then contacted Tony if the spot on the Avengers was still open. Tony replied that they are en route to take down several Hydra bases if he was up for it, and then Peter could drop by Stark Tower later that evening. Months later, Harry was still coping with the aftermath after the transformation into the Green Goblin while being at Ravencroft. There he was visited by the Gentleman, and the Gentleman said that he has received intel that there was an android created by the Avengers that went rogue in Sokovia. The android was very powerful and possessed its own intelligence. The Gentleman said that he has assembled a team with Rhino and Harry himself. He plans to recruit the Lizard on board their team too. Harry said that since he now knows the true identity of Spider-Man, hunting him down would be much easier more than ever. And that is going to be, what if Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man had been in the MCU timeline in Avengers 2012? If you guys did enjoy the previous Tobey Maguire MCU timeline, I do hope you enjoyed this one. I will be going all the way into Civil War and also Endgame along with Infinity War, so things are going to be crazy. And are you guys hyped for No Way Home and the Multiverse? I know that I am. I'm super hyped to see what the heck's going to be happening in that film. But anyways, as always guys, if you guys did enjoy this Marvel's What If, and if you guys want to see more, do make sure to subscribe, like, share, and turn your notifications on so you and your friends are up to date with the latest content. But anyways, as always guys, thanks for tuning in and have a fantastic day.